Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started because I want to make sure we keep everybody on time. We're scheduled to go for about 30 minutes or so today, and want to leave time for Q&A as well. So we are here to talk about the 5 things you can do if your accounting department is short-staffed. Thanks for joining us, and this is a topic that comes up quite often right now. We hear this from a lot of clients. Between the pandemic and the Great Resignation, the accounting workforce has really taken a pretty good hit over the last year to 2 years or so. I'm joined today by Catherine Edgecombe, the practice leader for our CAS practice here in the Bay Area. She's actually out of Atlanta as we've become more of a national practice. My team in our consulting department is really spread throughout the United States, which is great because we've got great talent where they actually live, which makes it a lot easier for us to serve clients. And she's really going to do the bulk of the heavy lifting today to talk about some things that we think are both preemptive and also things that you can do if you find yourself in this situation. But first, let me give you a quick commercial here about the firm for those of you that may or may not be aware of who we are and what we do. We're a full-service accounting, consulting, and advisory firm. We now have over 300 professionals. When I joined the firm about 6.5, 7 years ago, we were at about 125. So we've grown quite a bit over the last several years, which is fantastic. We're in 6 offices across the West Coast, and we've got remote resources, all over the United States and North America. And in addition to audit and tax, the consulting group, which I lead, offers a wide range of services from the fractional CFOs and controllers, outsourced accounting, internal audit, and a whole host of technology solutions. And we're also one of a handful of accounting firms that's B Corp certified. And for those of you that don't know what that is, that's a designation that indicates that we strive to balance purpose and profits. As you're seeing more and more of the Christmas and holiday commercials on TV, I'm actually seeing that B Corp logo enter into a lot of the advertisements that are out there. So this is becoming a bigger and bigger deal in the marketplace. And if you want to learn more about it, you can actually go over to our website at www.ssfllp.com and then look for the Sensiba Center for Sustainability. We've got quite a bit of knowledge there that we're trying to share with folks, and we're happy to discuss that with any of you that might be interested in that. And then just quick on our consulting practice in general, we try to partner with the best-in-class software publishers that are out there. I've listed a few on this slide from Sage Intacct. What's not listed is QuickBooks. We do work a lot with them. On the close and reporting spectrum, we've got Blackline. For bill pay, we use Bill.com, which is now Bill. And for those of you that have to report on leases, we do use LeaseCrunch, which is a really cost-effective system to help you manage that entire process. If you have any questions about any of this whatsoever, please reach out. We're happy to discuss any of that with you. And if you've got needs, we're happy to hop on a call to help you out. But now I'm going to turn things over to Catherine, and she's going to run through our agenda and get into today's content. Oh, and a couple of other housekeeping notes. You'll notice that the chat function is disabled. If you have questions, please put them into the Q&A, and we will do our best to respond to those during the call today. If not, we will follow up with you directly afterwards. And then also, we are recording this. We will send out a recording at the end of the day today, most likely. And I would also encourage you to head over to the Sensiba San Filippo YouTube page. There's a ton of content there. We do try to record as many of our trainings and our webinars as possible so that you can go back and look at them at your leisure. And I think one of the nice things you'll find there is they tend to be indexed. So if we have topics that we're covering, hopefully you can skip ahead to what you're interested in. And of course, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Okay, Catherine.
Okay, well, good morning, and thank you all for joining us today. I know it's a very busy time of year, so we are going to try to make this as productive of a half hour as we can. As Frank mentioned, today we'll discuss things that you can do when your accounting department is short-staffed. I know some of you are already in that situation, and some of you may be anticipating the fact that you may become short-staffed in the next couple of months, which hopefully won't happen, but we know that that's the environment that we're living in. So today we'll cover how working in the cloud, staying current on account reconciliations, documenting your processes and procedures, standardizing and automating reporting, and prioritizing cash can help your company. So let's start with working in the cloud and how it will help if your accounting department's short-staffed. If you have not already, it's a good idea to move your department away from on-premise software and into cloud-based software. So just to clarify what I'm talking about, if you have one computer that runs your software, or you have to go into the office or log into a specific computer, then you need to start to explore cloud-based software. Some of the software that we recommend and that we use in our group is QuickBooks Online and Sage Intacct. And moving to a system like QuickBooks Online or Sage Intacct can have a significant impact on your company's ability to operate effectively and efficiently in today's environment. So from an efficiency standpoint, cloud-based technologies integrate better with other resources and other platforms like banking systems, bill pay, payroll systems, inventory management, and point of sale systems. So just to name a few, there's others, but those are the ones that we tend to see used the most with our clients. So being cloud-based allows systems to talk back and forth in real time. This significantly reduces the amount of human touch that's needed to get work completed. And when you reduce some of the old school, keying of data, you reduce the number of manual errors, but you also reduce the number of resources needed. And since we're talking about staffing today, we definitely want to talk about how you can reduce some of those resource needs. So another benefit of cloud-based software is the working from anywhere. And we all know that's been a hot topic since the start of the pandemic, and it still is. And while working from anywhere may help retain some of your talent, it might also help if you're short-staffed because you're not tied to an office or a specific location, and you can use mobile capabilities to work wherever and whenever it's convenient. Now, not saying you want to work at all times, at all hours, everywhere, but when you're short-staffed, sometimes you do have to do that. And so we want to make that as easy as possible. One other thing that I wanted to highlight about cloud-based software is that some software companies are starting to sunset their older systems or their desktop versions or their on-premise versions, whatever you want to call it, and they're discontinuing tech support over the next couple of years. So you may be forced to make the move, whether you want to or not. So we're suggesting that you make the move at a convenient time. So if your resources are good and it's a time where you can make that move, or you want to do that before you have to. So make it a choice, not a requirement. And also you just get better tech support with the cloud-based softwares right now. And that's especially important when you're short-staffed and you need that extra support.
Yeah, one of the things, Catherine, through a lot of the PPP webinars I did was we did have a client early on in PPP that, when we all had to kind of vacate our offices, they actually had to send somebody back in to go grab the desktop computer where their general ledger resided. And so, you start thinking about things like that and trying to work in today's environment. I use our own situation here of what we've done, right? We're a Bay Area focused firm, but I think now we're in 26 different states actually with where we have employees working, which creates a whole host of other issues, but we've kind of embraced that remote concept. So we've got people that, have decided to leave the Bay Area. We've hired a lot of people outside the Bay Area. We've acquired some practices outside of the Bay Area, but being able to work anywhere has really been a huge help for us, right? To keep the workflow going. And if we had to rely on just being in the Bay Area, I don't think we'd be able to do that. And there's one other thing. I know over the past several weeks we've done more kind of in the office things, and it seems like the COVID virus is still alive and present everywhere, because I see the messages come out after the fact when we have a group gathering. Unfortunately, we're still seeing some COVID impact, right? And so just keep that in mind as you're planning for all of this, right? And if you're in the middle of this right now and you're kind of short-staffed and you're going, how do I possibly manage this? making the move to a cloud-based software. So I think kind of the easiest one is QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. It's not a real expensive proposition, and there's good resources. We can help you with that. QuickBooks will step in and help too. And it's a heck of a lot cheaper than you might think to do something like that. So if you're interested, by all means, reach out. We'd be happy to talk to you. So let's go ahead and move on to the next item now.
Sure. So our second tip is staying current on account reconciliations. Our experience has shown that reconciling accounts is often delayed when an accounting department's short-staffed. You would think that that would be one of the first things you would do, but what we've seen is that managers or owners or whoever's in charge of the accounting department think they can just do a quick spot check of those accounts, and then they'll do a full reconciliation later. That's normally the intent. We'll get around to it at a later date, and we can do 2 or 3 months or a quarter or even a whole year at the same time. But reality is that when you put off these tasks, it doesn't mean that it's going to just be the same amount of time. It's going to take exponentially longer down the road for you to complete them. And then you just get further and further behind, and you're kind of pushing the issues down the road, but you're also you're pushing the solutions too, and which can be detrimental to the business. So it's an issue, but how do you make this easier and prevent it so that you won't have to spend more time later on? And there's a couple things. So one, we already talked about moving to the cloud, and when you do that, you can leverage the bank feeds and credit card feeds, which will help reduce the manual effort to enter these transactions into your accounting system. And so we suggest that if you only have time to do 1 or 2 things, at the very, very least, make sure that your bank accounts and your credit cards are reconciled. We'll call that the bare minimum in terms of what you should accomplish. So we'll just kind of go to the lowest common denominator at this point and just talk about those. Obviously, we would recommend that you reconcile everything, but if you have to prioritize, and we often do when resources are limited, definitely reconcile your bank account and your credit cards. These 2 items will help mitigate fraud and will also give you continued insights into your sources of cash and your uses of cash, which is really important. And I know this sounds very basic, but in turbulent times, it's important to try to manage the basics the best that you can. And sometimes you just have to take a step back and look at the most basic thing you can do that can be helpful.
And I think just to kind of add on there too, Catherine, if you are still manually entering in a lot of data into your system and you are still cutting a lot of paper checks, you are not keeping up with the times. And working in the cloud and taking advantage of some of these add-on softwares will literally save you a ton of time. And when you're in a situation where you're resource constrained, you have to start looking at technology and how can technology help you to get more done with less people.
We all hear that working smarter, not harder. And this is the time when that old cliche definitely plays in. And so hopefully some of these tips will help you think through ways that you can get more work done with less resources.
Absolutely. Okay, let's keep going.
Okay, so now on to documenting processes and procedures. This may sound very counterintuitive to spend the time documenting things when you're short-staffed, but hang with me for a minute and I'll give you a couple of reasons why we want to do this. So, at some point you're going to need to explain to somebody else how to do something, or you're going to need to explain to, remind yourself how to do it. And if you don't know how it's done and it's not documented, it's a lot harder, and it's certainly a lot harder to share and train someone else. So some basic documentation will go a long ways towards providing useful information to someone else who may need to step in and try to help. And it also may minimize the time that it takes to train someone and then sadly to retrain. So having that resource to go back to and reference can be very valuable. So once again, we have to go back to prioritization. What if you can only document a couple of things, what should you do? First of all, suggest that you start with the close list. Having a closed checklist is a very basic tool, right? But it saves companies a significant amount of time for a couple of reasons. One, it takes the guesswork out of the period end process and allows managers and management to monitor progress and make sure that nothing is forgotten. When we get busy, which obviously happens to most of us at some time during the year, it's easy to miss a step along the way. So a checklist will help prevent this and will save some time fixing things later. And just to be clear, the checklist should only be as detailed as it needs to be for that situation. So a couple of additional tips here is don't over engineer your checklist. Don't make something so specific if it's okay to be simple. Don't stress over the information being perfect. Just getting something down is helpful. Pointing someone in the right direction on what's needed is key here, not writing a novel. And something else that I found helpful is to think outside of the box when you're putting together a checklist. If you don't have time to sit down and spend a day, documenting and screenshotting everything, use the resources that you do have. Pull out your phone, video it while you're doing it, make the recording of it while you're driving, talk through the process. Then you can go through the checklist and start to make it, prettier and in a great format when you have time. But at least you'll have a checklist there, and you'll save some time later if you have something down. So let's go through a couple of other items that we have on the slide that you can do in advance to help prepare. So a couple of examples here are documenting policies while you are still fully staffed, or if you have an employee who's leaving, go ahead and try to get the documentation then. I know when an employee is departing, there's often a very long list of things to do, but I would highly recommend that you go ahead and add documenting the processes. Same thing as before, if you need to record it, if you need to use different technology, there's lots of free resources out there and other tools that you can use to record transactions so you know what's happening on a computer. It's definitely suggest you do that. And then also, if you are in the position of being fully staffed right now, take advantage of it, spend some time and prioritize documentation. Also, I would suggest that you prioritize cross-training. It can help tremendously if someone understands even pieces of a process. If you have an employee who leaves unexpectedly, if you have someone else who's somewhat knowledgeable about the process, you can keep things going. So all of these take time, but they save time in the long run. So I'll stop here for a second, just in case.
Just to add to that, Catherine, this is probably the one where we get the most pushback from clients, right? I don't have time to do this. I don't see the benefit. But really, this can be your savior if you're in a jam, right? And like we're saying, don't write chapter and verse, just get the basics down, right? Because at some point, if you're short-staffed, you're going to need another resource, whether it's somebody else within the company, if you have to bring on some temporary help or reach out to someone that can outsource some of your work, you're going to have to explain it anyway. And where we see companies that are unable to close their books in a reasonable amount of time, this is really the number one reason, because they don't have a roadmap to get there. And so they never quite know when they're done, right? And so this is a real basic tool that can be very helpful in those situations.
Yeah, for sure. And if you do need to move and bring in an outside resource to help, having it ready, you're going to move much faster. Or even when you bring on a new employee, it will be much faster if you have the processes documented and have that close list done. Now, obviously, there's many other things that we could suggest that you document, but first and foremost, make sure that you have your close for your monthly, your quarterly, and your annual close process in place.
Yep. Okay, let's talk about some reporting now.
Okay, moving on to our fourth tip, standardizing and automating reporting. So, back to when you're short-staffed, sadly, reporting and analysis tends to become a lower priority. You're spending so much of your time just keeping the day-to-day operations running that you don't think about extra reports, and that comes back to bite you in the long run. So a couple of things that we recommend: standardizing and automating the reporting process. So this will help management focus on what's the most important thing to run the business. So depending on your business, it may be something slightly different, but for most businesses, the cash flow statement can be the most important statement and report to look at every month. It tells you whether or not you're generating cash from your operations. And it also tells you how you're using your dollars, both for investments or what your financing picture looks like. For example, are you borrowing money? Are you paying down debt? It just gives you your overall cash picture. And that's very important. So cash flow would be number one. And then the income statement would be the second one that I would say is the most important for you to review, or for at least for most companies, especially now in the inflationary environment that we're living in. So over the past year, especially, we've seen many companies that have been struggling to keep up with pricing changes, especially with the rising cost. So margins are going down, profitability is going down, and companies that have been on top of their financials and having good reports have been able to course correct and make some adjustments. Some of them, and now that's not always the situation. You don't always have the opportunity to raise prices to keep up with inflation, but if you have good data, then at least you have the right information to make a decision and you understand why things are happening. If you're not running these reports and taking a look at them and doing the analysis, then you don't know, you're guessing. And that can be quite detrimental. So another report that I wanted to make sure that I call out that's on our list is looking at your top 10 customers and then also your top 10 suppliers. So you really want to know where your money's coming from and where your money's going. Those are two key pieces of information, and both are very insightful. If you don't know where you're getting your money and you don't know how you're spending your money, then you're probably going to be in a difficult situation, and it's going to be hard to know how to make good decisions around the company. So in looking at those, you also want to look at your accounts receivable and your accounts payable. These reports both give you some insights into the health of your company and how things are going. So, and we'll talk more in a minute about why it's so important for the receivables and payables just around cash, but I wanted to call out those two reports now. So one other thing that I think is important for us to talk about is dashboards. We talked about cloud-based reporting, and one of the reasons that you want to go to the cloud too is that you can have dashboards, and you have better dashboards in most of our cloud-based software. And with advances in technology, dashboards are just becoming more prevalent and more standard, as well as they provide a good snapshot of the data for your company and your overall financials. But in order for this data to be helpful, it needs to be updated in more real time, which is why you need to be cloud-based. So it kind of goes in a big circle. There's some things that feed into each other. We want to make sure that you're getting good data. And so if you're using a cloud-based software, you get interfaces with other, and the data is being fed into the GL, and so you can see where you are. And with a properly designed system, you can see a good snapshot of your various reports and your various financial situations without having to spend as much time running all of the individual reports, and you're able to do this with less resources. And then you can just focus on your key indicators and the key items that will help you identify issues and will help you course correct and prevent future issues. So if you have the option, have dashboards, we definitely recommend it and encourage you to think through what are the key reports for your company and what helps you make the best decisions, and then get those on the dashboard and then take a look at the dashboard. Don't just have it out there. Make sure you put that as part of your close process or part of your weekly process, that you're taking a look and evaluating them.
Yeah, so one thing I just wanted to add there too, Catherine, I think what's important here as well is to eliminate reports that you don't really use, right? Like we see some companies, they have like a binder or whatever that's put together at the end of a period. And, you know, there's maybe one or two reports that are really useful and the rest are just busy work that someone's doing, but no one's really paying much attention to, right? And as we get into stressful times where maybe we're low on staff and we're trying to just kind of keep the ball rolling, getting rid of a lot of the ancillary reports that aren't being used is a good thing to do, and really focus management on what's important in the business.
And if you can find those 3 or 4 reports that really help you and help drive decisions, then focus on those. The other ones may come into play when you have more time and more people, but for now, focus on what's the most important.
Yep. Okay, let's get into cash is king. I like this one.
Yeah. So what is most important? Cash, right? Cash is king. It's kind of a joke saying it that way, but it's true. Billing and collections are extremely important, and we all know that. And yet somehow those are two things that tend to fall by the wayside. And they never should, but they do. So just to be very transparent and clear, if you're not billing and you're not collecting, you're obviously not bringing in the money and things are not going to end well. So billing and collections are the lifeblood of your company. And yet we've seen it happen over and over again that it's something that gets dropped or that companies forget to do or they don't prioritize it. And that becomes an issue. So let's talk about why that happens. Why is it that billing becomes the task that nobody wants to do and they push off and then all of a sudden it's 2 or 3 months down the road? Well, one, it requires processes and systems and time. And those are things that we don't always have, especially when we're short staffed. You might still have your systems, but you may not have your processes fully in place and you may not have the time to do it. So while it's often tedious and time consuming, you really need to take it off of the back burner and put it as a priority. Make sure that it's number one on the list. And it's the most important thing you can do to keep your doors open. So you need to keep billing. And so in order to keep billing, we all know it's important, but what can you do to simplify it, streamline it, make it easier, take away some of the time, make it less complicated? Because if it's complicated, we know that tends to be something that gets pushed, and we'll go for, in human nature, you go for the easiest task first. So one suggestion is to change the way that you bill. If it's possible for you to move to a flat monthly billing or a recurring charge, try to do that. Even if you need to do catch up and do an extra invoice later to true things up. If there's any way you can move to flat or recurring, we encourage you doing that, at least in the beginning, to start getting things stabilized and make sure you get your bills out. Also making sure you're taking a good look at your accounts receivable report every month and seeing if there's any issues. If there are, and you see that there's trends with certain companies, reaching out to them, or if you see an overarching trend that you're not collecting on a regular basis and you don't have the resource to do that and to be involved in it, then it's time to look at a company that may be able to help you with that. There's many companies that specialize in collections, and so that would be a good place to start. It might cost you a little bit to do that, but it will be worth it if you start collecting your invoices again. So I know that's super basic, but I just stress again, prioritize invoicing and collecting.
Yeah, this one really has me scratching my head, and we've seen it over and over and over again over the past 12 to 18 months of companies just we're behind and well, what's going on? Well, we haven't billed anybody for 3 months, and then I look at their AR aging and everything's in the 60 to 120 day columns, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy here, right? They get behind, so they stop billing, and then no one's following up on receivables because probably the bills went out and weren't quite right. They weren't communicating with their clients, and it just turns into a big mess, right? And then once you get to that point, it becomes harder and harder to get caught up. So as much as it may sound difficult to do, trying to stay on top of this will save you a lot of time and expense down the road.
Yeah, for sure. And that is something as we move into other resources, that if you have one or two pieces that you need to get help with, that is a good piece to outsource. And so we've talked about, speaking of outsourcing, we've talked about a couple of tips, and hopefully you're listening to them and you're thinking, okay, this is making me feel all right. I like these ideas. I want to do these, but how am I going to do them? I know there's probably some anxiety out there and frustration of, I want to do these, but I need an extra set of hands. There's just not enough people in my team to make this happen. So at this point, it's time to consider outsourcing. And at times you just need an extra set of hands. Sometimes you need an entire team, and we're here to help. So as Frank said in the beginning, there's ways to, and we'll show you in a slide or two, how to contact us, but we're here to help you, and we can help by scaling up or down as needed to give you some extra support. So I'll quickly run through a couple of ways that we help our clients. We help by moving you to the cloud to make it easier for you to have remote access to your data and to fully use integrations and update your processes. We can help with reconciliations if you're a little behind and need to get caught up, or if you just need to help get those processes documented so that you have them. We can also provide outsourced controller or CFO duties if you want to have someone else have an extra set of eyes on your books and help point out some places that you need help. Or we can provide full transactional level processing. And we even do audit readiness. So our team is available and they're trained and they're here to support you and your company when you need help and however you need help to provide you additional support and to get you up and running, keep you running and keep things moving as smoothly as possible, either long-term or on a short-term basis while your team may be short-staffed.
Yeah, and just one other thing to mention there too, Catherine, is we may have situations where, for independence reasons or we may not have the exact right resource at the right time. We also have relationships outside of the firm with other organizations that we work very closely with. So even if we might not have the right resource to help you, I can typically find somebody that can be of assistance to you. So, we do that all the time for clients, and that's something that we're happy to do as well. So let's hit our recap here real quick and we can get close to wrapping it up.
Okay, so we've covered quite a few items and hopefully you feel better about where you are and you feel validated about some of the ideas that you've been thinking through and the processes that you've been putting in place. And if not, we're here, we can help you. So just let us know. But our focus today was really to help you think through how you can make it easier to keep your books and records up to date, even if you find yourself short on resources. And we know that no one's perfect and that there's always going to be things that don't get done, but hopefully this has helped you think through how to prioritize, what to prioritize, and what are some of the items that are critical that need to be done every month to keep you current, and also to help prevent fraud, or if there is fraud, to help you catch that early on to make sure that it doesn't become a long-term issue. So just to recap a couple of things, compiling some basic documentation is going to make it easier, moving to the cloud, reconciling in your bank accounts and focusing on your cash. Those are the ones that you really need to do. Prioritize cash. I'll say it again. No, it's sound like a broken record here. But if you need help, reach out. We're here to help make things better and allow you to sleep better at night, and maybe even let you take a little PTO and relax knowing that your financial records are in order, because we want to make sure that everyone is still here healthy and happy with good financials in 2023. So with that, I'll turn it over if we have any questions that have come through in the chat. Either Frank or I can help answer those.
Yeah, I don't see anything in the chat. If there's anything live, if you want to type in a question or ask a question, let us know. Otherwise, I think we are ready to wrap things up. So once again, thanks for joining us today. If you have questions, please reach out. Please also take a look at our YouTube page. There's a ton of content there on a whole host of different topics. And like Catherine and I said, we're here to help. Just reach out. So with that, we'll end it. Have a great holiday, and we will be back in 2023 with more webinars. Thanks a lot.